then, mate. Right, so today we have David Clarke, aka Retrobeachman.
Hello.
How you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Yeah,
Good.
you?
Good. Yeah, not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. One of the first questions I like to ask is, what was your first games machine stroke computer, like your first introduction to into games?
Yeah, so there were a few. I mean, I had an Atari 2600. I remember that quite vividly with all the cartridges. Um, so it was probably around the same sort of time as sort of getting into that as sort of the Spectrum, really. So it was sort of both of those. So I'm trying to think of what was first, really. It's probably the Spectrum, actually.
Oh wow.
And then because we had like the rubber keyed. We never sort of had the like the ZX80 or 81 or anything like that.
Yeah.
But we had the rubber keyed ones. We had 16K. Realised that wasn't enough. Then we had a 48K. Then we got the Plus and stuff. But yeah, so I think it was the Spectrum. That was my first sort of foray into computers, programming, and of course gaming. So.
Yeah. Was
Yeah,
you a fan of the arcades at all?
yeah, massively. Love the arcades. Sort of go there trying to sort of like play Space Invaders and sort of because there's a sort of certain knack to it and there's a pattern and stuff like that. Used to love playing sort of Pac-Man and Pac-Land, Pac-Mania, all the rest of it. Yeah, and playing like the Simpsons and like the Turtles and stuff. And I remember sort of one time with the Simpsons, I was there with my sister and I think we must have put in about 10 quid between us, and obviously this is back in the day as well.
Yeah.
So and we got to the final boss, we got to Burns, but we didn't have enough money to finish it. It was really frustrating. We got right to the end and it's just me left, and yeah, done for. But yeah, very, very sort of happy memories of arcades and stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because if I remember right, that was quite a big machine, wasn't it? The Simpsons machine.
Yeah, it was huge. It had a huge sort of panel, control panel for all the sort of like 4 players and stuff. Actually had quite a big screen as well, didn't it?
Yeah, it was similar to the Turtles machine, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. No, I love Turtles as well. I can't, I actually can't remember how far I got in it, but I remember starting it quite a few times. But yeah, that's one of the ones that I still sort of go back to, and I'm sort of playing the old games and stuff. The Turtles and Simpsons, probably mainly the Turtles, I think, because I had quite an affinity of that with like the shows and stuff as well. But yeah, Turtles was my go-to. Michelangelo, always my favourite.
I was it.
So,
I was always a Raph fan. I was.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, being a Specky fan, and that was, as you say, like your first computer. But when did you start getting into programming then?
So that was on the Specky as well, and that would have probably been around late 80s probably. So I was born 81. So I sort of got into Specky probably sort of about 87, 88-ish, thereabouts. So sort of fairly late, if you like, into the Specky's lifestyle, but or a lifespan. But yeah, I played sort of plenty of the older games as they were at that time. But yeah, in terms of the sort of the programming, yeah, sort of late 80s, and I used to sort of get all the like the manuals because we'd have some of the like the magazines and stuff like for the typings and stuff. You used to sit there for hours doing them.
Bunking off school.
Yeah, I did once or twice. But no, yeah, I remember once it was like I was in secondary school, and as a mate and I, he had a +2, and we found out he literally lived 5 doors down the road from me. So we used to go around each other's houses playing games, but mainly programming. And we came up with a basic sort of Microsoft Windows, if you like. It had a login system and everything. It had Notepad, Paint, and you could sort of save them to tape and then load them back into the program as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so yeah. So and we'd sort of like have sleepovers,
Mm.
purely for the purpose that we could sort of like game together, like late, but also for programming. So I remember one time it was like I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, I've got an idea for that Windows thing, and it was the paint thing that we did, and it was sort of like just moving it around, a bit like an Etch a Sketch. That was the idea.
Yeah.
But it's like changing ink colours and the paper colours as you're going along to sort of draw a best picture as you could, really. But yeah, I sort of did that, and then I tried like a fruit machine game. So I really liked the fruit machine simulator at the time.
Oh, the Codemasters one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good game.
Yeah, Cash Bash.
Yeah.
Always remember that. But I tried to make my own because I only knew Basic and I didn't really know much about machine code. And I thought machine code was just putting in a load of numbers, and I didn't really understand what the numbers were. I didn't know that there were books on it or anything. So yeah, it was frustrating, but it made me want to learn sort of Basic more and get into that. So I ended up making my own fruit machine game in Basic, and I called it Starburst. Before the Starburst fruits, the sweets came along.
April fruits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was weird. I called it Starburst just because I thought it was just sounded like a cool name, and it was 9 characters long, for like the lights that sort of went up and down when you were sort of spinning the reels, and it counted the numbers. So yeah, so that was fun to code. I had all the UDGs for all the fruit elements and stuff, and the reels scrolling, as it were. Just a load of print commands. Yeah, so it's a shame I lost all those tapes. I don't really know what happened to them, but
Oh no, I was just going to ask you if you'd still got them.
No, well, quite a lot of the stuff sort of went to one of my mum's friends, which unfortunately never returned.
Right.
Yeah, so through sort of my mum and dad falling out, most of the Spectrum stuff went to him because he bought it. And then the tapes just went by the wayside. I don't really know what happened to them, unfortunately, which is a shame. But yeah, but I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah. So, what do you do for a day job then, Dave?
Well, actually, I'm a stay-at-home parent.
Okay. Oh,
So,
brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, so my wife and I were sort of said, if one of us was able to sort of stay at home while the other one could sort of sustain like paying the bills and still have enough sort of disposable income, then we'd sort of do that so that one could sort of like spend the time with the sort of kids and take them to clubs and all the rest of it and do the school pickups, drop-offs, etc.
Yeah.
And that ended up being me. So it's funny how it worked out because I was working for Vodafone. It was actually sort of cable and wireless, but Vodafone had bought cable and wireless. So of course the Vodafone internet you get at home now, the broadband you get at home was the old Demon internet.
Yeah.
So I used to sort of do support for that, and like the corporate support for like all the like point-to-point Ethernet circuits and all things like that, private circuits and stuff like that. And I was actually going to hand in my notice probably around sort of Christmas time that particular year, but they actually made everyone redundant in June, and they gave us 6 months' pay, so it worked out perfectly.
Right.
So, and yeah, so I ended up having an extra 6 months at home with the family because my wife's on maternity leave, and yeah, it's just been like this sort of ever since, really. So we've just sort of decided, well, my wife she's an underwriter. In the P&I industry, and yeah, so she's sort of happy to sort of carry on doing that, and she works from home as well, occasionally, so that's nice. She gets to spend a bit of extra time with the kids, but it also means that when I've sort of got all the housework and gardening done, all the rest of it, I get a little bit of time sort of during the day to do stuff like this, like sort of like programming and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a good balance. It works out nicely.
Yeah, I think it's important to have. You've got to have some time on your own. I think it's healthy, definitely.
Yeah.
So you've got a 24-hour job then, really, haven't you?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of the kids when they sort of stay up late and where they're sort of up early, and then you hear one of them get up in the middle of the night and sort of need you for something. So it's like it's kind of like being on call, isn't it, really? But no, like you say, it's like it is 24/7. I mean, as you know, sort of a parent yourself, it's a full-time full-time sort of thing, really. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I wouldn't change it. You know.
Oh no, no, absolutely not. One of the places I was working at, I was working for a spring manufacturer at the time, and we hadn't long had my son, and I was made redundant. But for the first, I think it was nearly 2 years, I decided I was still looking for work, but not seriously active looking for work for that mate. Because we just had our son, and I was like, I'm going to use this time to spend it with him, and
Yeah,
and it was
yeah,
amazing. I absolutely loved it. Because there's so many parents out there that they miss everything. They really do, especially
yeah,
more so the father. That because
yeah.
that's
Because you
just
only get a
that's the
couple of
way it
weeks,
is.
don't you?
Oh yeah, it's you only get a couple of weeks, and the money that you get, um, it's pretty rubbish, really, isn't it? Um,
Yeah,
I think it was £100 a week. I think that's all it was. So I remember saving up enough so I could, at the time, saving up enough so I could cover that month, if you know what I mean. So I could have those weeks off.
yeah,
Um, I think you can have longer now, but you still only get paid for those 2 weeks. Um,
yeah. No, it's a shame, but it's
it is,
yeah. I think we were just super lucky
yeah,
with the sort of the
the
timings
timing,
because
yeah.
originally they were only going to give us 2 months redundancy, but our sort of managers fought for it and they said, well, basically you've done us over. They closed the whole South End office
Mm,
and moved it all up to Glasgow. And obviously there was no way I could sort of travel. There's no way. It's too opposite end of the country, well the UK. So
yeah.
there's no way we sort of could have done that. And they said, well, it's 400 people you're sort of letting go with not a great deal of amount of sort of notice. I think we had about about 6 and 8 months notice, if you like. Um, so we had to sort of have people down from the Glasgow office, and we were sort of training them up, which was which was odd, but we were sort of training them up to do our job, if you like. But our managers fought for it, and they ended up getting us 6 months, so which covered the period perfectly. So those extra sort of 6 months at home with the family, all four of us at home,
Oh, amazing.
um,
Yeah.
it was wouldn't wouldn't change that. It was you can't get that time back. So
No,
it was really nice.
no. Had you worked there long?
I was there for let me think. I think it was about 4 years I was there. So
Oh, right, okay. So you was entitled to at least 4 months redundant. Is it a month pay per year? I'm trying to think how they do it now. After two, but you've got to have worked at a place at 2 years, haven't you? I think that's how it used to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, my wife's calling me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. All good?
Yeah, sorry about that, mate.
No, that's
No, that was
not a problem.
my youngest, the 7-year-old. He just wanted to let me know how it went at gymnastics because
Oh, well, okay.
he's being assessed for ASD at the moment. So he sort of finds similar to me. Obviously, he's genetic anyway, isn't
Hmm.
it? He finds sort of certain social situations really sort of difficult and joining in and things like that. So last time he went, it was an hour session and he sat on the side for 40 minutes. So he wasn't sort of confident enough to join in because he didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
But he really wanted to do it, and he said, "Oh, can you pay for me to go again?" So we're like, "Yeah, sure. If you're happy to do it and you want to do it, then yeah, we're more than happy." So he wanted to tell me that he'd done it and he joined in like the whole time. So I'm pleased for him because he finds things like that. Um, I mean, it's like when you first met me. Really, he finds things like that really daunting because he doesn't know anyone, and it's like it's totally the unknown. He'd not been there before, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, he absolutely loved it by the sounds of it. So he was quite confident about it, talking about it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
bit random, but yeah, sorry about that.
no, no, no. I think it's. it's an important subject, really. I mean, I think that we, a lot of us in this type of hobby, if you like, I think we all suffer with it.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you have the ability to put this, like, I don't know, like, almost like a different persona on. So the introvert in you turns into an extrovert,
Mm.
but it's almost like a bit of an act. It's like what I'm doing now. I mean, it's only because I'm starting to get used to it now, I think. But at heart, I'm definitely an introvert. But sometimes I can go, right, I'm going to do this, and then do it for a certain period of time, and then break away from it.
Yeah.
It's really strange, isn't it? Because that was
Especially when it's something you love as well. It's
yeah, yeah. But do you not find it easier to talk to people who are the same? Because
yes.
I found because I was the same because obviously I met you at the Retro Computer Museum in Leicester, and that's an entire room full of of
Yes.
introverts, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I was so nervous speaking to Jim Bagley,
Yeah.
and I'd seen him a few times at the retro revival events. I kept looking at him, going, I know who you are. I don't know your name, but I know your face,
Yeah.
and I couldn't picture it. And this was before Spectrum Next was announced, um, because I'd left the Spectrum scene, if you like, because I think as soon as the Plus 3 came out, so I followed that history of Spectrums, the rubber key, the Plus, the one, the 128 toast rack, Plus 2.
Yeah.
But I think as soon as Amstrad took over, I was starting to break away from the Spectrum scene, if you like, and I went straight to Atari. So I had Atari ST,
Hmm.
and then after that, I moved on to the Amiga, and then that was my love. Then the Amiga,
Yeah.
and then various other games machines after that, and that was it really. I've always played games constantly, but as the consoles progressed and it got to about 90, I'm going to say about 94, 95 when the Pentium came out,
Yeah.
and that was it then. I was all PCs. Everything was Doom, Quake, that was it. That was,
Yeah.
and I progressed
I'll do.
to there, and I was all PCs. So it wasn't until I found out about that Kickstarter, the Spectrum Next, and all of a sudden we've all we've all got together from
Yeah.
all different backgrounds, and we've all started to go into all these different events and whatever,
Yeah.
and we've all met each other. It's really strange. I don't know if you feel the same, but
Yeah. No, I do. Yeah. It's odd because I don't think we would have done normally, would we? We wouldn't
no,
have sort of like said, oh, there's like say in for example, the World of Spectrum group or ZX Spectrum group on Facebook or something like that.
mm,
I don't think someone sort of would have, or if someone did, I don't think people would have sort of thought, well, let's all get together and let's sort of do something. Let's meet up and let's chat about this stuff. I don't think just something like that ad hoc would have happened. I think because of all these events, it has brought people together. Literally, it's
yeah,
the community. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be talking to you now.
yeah,
I wouldn't sort of be back into sort of doing programming and stuff with the Specky or doing even sort of. I mean, I wouldn't have even touched web server code or anything like that or website code if it wasn't for the Specky as well, because I was like, oh, there's. I mean, my first foray into that was looking at the source code of the Google homepage years and years and years ago. So this would have been about I want to say 2002. And I looked at the source, and I'm like, and it opened it up in Notepad, and I didn't really understand how websites and web servers worked. I didn't really get it at the time. I'd never really looked into it, so I didn't really understand how it worked. That basically the files are hosted on a web server, and you're viewing what's, you're basically downloading a copy of that, essentially. So when I was viewing the source, I thought, oh my God, I'm editing the Google homepage. How naive I was. I'm like, but oh look, nothing's changed. And then I started Googling, and I'm like, oh, that's how it works. And then I sort of learned from there. But yeah, it's all sort of come from doing the specky stuff. And like you say, because of sort of all these events and stuff, and especially with the sort of the next coming out, the next sort of, when it came out, the first Kickstarter, the buzz it created.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, it's immense, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I think it started off for me in 2014, and it was one of the first retro revival events I went to, and it was in Warsaw, and John Romero was there.
Wow, yeah.
So I got to meet him. That was, I did not have a clue what to say to him.
Yeah,
I was totally starstruck.
Creative Doom is like,
yeah. I think I've said before, I said hello to him, and I was like, "Oh, I like what you're wearing." It was one of that. Yeah, this is such an advanced program and game designer, and I'm like, I'm nowhere. I was just having a little social chat with him, and his wife was with him as well.
Yeah.
And I was just, can you sign this for me? Just like a little kid. And so that was cool, getting a copy of Quake signed and having a picture with him. But I played Doom against him as well, which was brilliant. But he plays backwards because he knows the levels.
Yeah.
He literally goes through the entire level just facing you backwards. So he's constantly shooting you, because he's just moving around. That's how he plays the game. He does it all in reverse. So you got no chance.
No, well, no, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, fantastic.
No, but I suppose if you know it so well, then it like the back of your hand quite well, going backwards.
Yeah. So I was going to these events, and then when they showed off, eventually when they showed off Spectrum Next, I was like, wow, what is that? That is brilliant. And I didn't want to touch it because I'd already signed up for the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And I wanted it. I wanted that that feeling that we had when we first opened up our original Spectrum.
Yeah.
And I don't know who the guy was who was on the stand at the time, but he's like, "No, have a game," and I can't. I don't want to touch it. I just want to see it.
Yeah.
And I think they showed the Melkor's Mansion demo running, and Baggers in Space had a demo at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, this is just," because it's something that isn't a PC. And I was like, this is brilliant, because I missed all those old computers.
Yeah.
And that feeling. So I don't know if that was the same for you.
Well, I'd only seen one actually in the flesh at Retro Computer Museum. That's the first time I'd sort of seen one in person.
Oh, Richards.
And it's
was that Richard? Was that Richards?
It was, I think. I'm trying to think now.
Because I know we put the
first or second time.
We put a demo on there, didn't we?
Yeah.
TX.
I remember playing it. That TK, was it 1696?
TX 1696.
Oh, TX. Yeah, and I think I played on that, but I didn't actually touch it and stuff, because it's the same kind of thing, because I backed Kickstarter too, because I backed Kickstarter 1, but I went for the board only.
Okay.
Because I wanted it sooner, and plus it was a little bit sort of more affordable, so I went for that, because at the time I couldn't afford to go for the whole thing. Whereas with Kickstarter 2, I've got 2 on the way. So,
have you really? Okay.
Yeah. So
what's the reason for 2? One to keep nice, and the other one just to work on, or?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, one to definitely use, have as the sort of the main workhorse. But one, um, initially it was, oh, I'm going to sort of get a second one, have it, so keep it nice, keep it pristine in the box, completely unused. And then sort of part of me said, well, actually, my eldest, he quite likes programming and coding and stuff as well. He's sort of getting into it. And he's 9 years old, so and he loves it. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's uploading stuff, and he's got what's it, Garage Game Maker on the Switch.
Right.
He codes stuff in Scratch, all sorts of things.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so I thought, well, I might actually keep it, and then sort of say, look, if you sort of want your own, and you want to sort of like code on something, and it's, you know, sort of what I used to do, if you like, or you know, do your own thing, whatever you want to do, just for them really as well. So I mean, the youngest, he's 7. He kind of, he is interested, but not as much as my oldest, not as much as Daniel. So yeah, so it's kind of sort of like the second one's kind of for them if they want it, and if they don't, it's just a sort of nice to sort of have and to keep sort of thing. But one most definitely will get used. So. And it'd be nice, but I'd only ever seen one first of all at RCM, and then I'd only ever touched one, because I made the decision when I was there, that the first time, to not touch it. So I just played, I just had the controller and played that game. But Andy had his out, I think, at the second one, wasn't connected.
Okay. Yeah.
And I sort of went up to it, and I sort of I pressed a couple of the keys, and I've got to do this. I have to. I can't.
Yeah.
I
Can't wait any longer. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got to do it, and I'm like, oh, that feels quite nice. I'm like, right, that's it. No more, because it wasn't plugged in. It literally just had the unit just sitting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that. Yeah, I couldn't resist the sort of touching. But it, like you say, it would be sort of nice to sort of open your box just like that. How you feel at Christmas? I've got a Spectrum. You know, it's that whole sort of new sort of thing, isn't it? So yeah, I'm looking forward to
it. They've done an absolutely fantastic job. They really have.
Yeah.
You know, the first Kickstarter's got a few issues, especially like with the HDMI connector and the sound. Because every now and again, if you turn it off and then turn it back on again, it still keeps. It's almost like it keeps part of the image in memory. It's really weird. So you have to, because I think the HDMI is still powering it somehow. So you have to disconnect the cable and then put that back in. I could do with finding, if there is such a thing, there's like a little switchable HDMI, or get somebody to make something.
Yeah.
That I can just off, on, and then save me keep, because I don't like pulling cables in and out, because it just reminds me of
a port, do you?
That's it. It just reminds me of the days of the RF failing on your Spectrum because of the constant on and, you know what I mean. Then you get a shitty picture, and then you've got to start jamming something in it to get a good picture, or a bit of tape wrapped round the cable.
At the back on the connection of our main telly, because it'd been taken out and put in so many times, you had to get it sort of just right, because it was really loose and like the middle parts wasn't sort of quite where it should have been. It was like slightly apart. So, and then once you sort of got it in, it's like right there, keep it in. But then when what was it? I think the Saturn came along, Saturn. It came with like a switchable one. So you'd plug that in, and then you could plug your sort of main aerial TV feed into it, and then you could switch whether you wanted like the Saturn, because it go to the Saturn. You switch whether you want that, or I think it might actually be in the Mega Drive, not Saturn, because I can't remember if Saturn had RF.
I don't know. Oh, I can't pull it out, but I've got one here with Sega on it, and it's got a switch on it.
Yeah,
and I think
that's probably it. Yeah,
I think it acted also as like a little booster and shielder, I think, as well.
Yeah.
For interference, but yeah. So, what Let's talk about what games and projects you've been working on.
Yes. So I think with stuff that I've released, I think the first one um, wasn't sort of, I say properly, but it wasn't sort of released like fully, like as a full sort of like game as such. But you know those old LCD games,
Hmm.
and you had like say like the racing ones where you had to just avoid other cars basically, and you got a point for every car you passed, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I made like a version of that using AGD, Arcade Games Designer,
Okay.
um, by Jonathan Caldwell. So I've made sort of, I've probably got about 40 odd things that I'd sort of tried out like in a folder, just like, oh, just try it. Because I love tinkering.
Hmm.
I love experimenting, just like trying different sort of techniques and different ways of doing things, which is how the Zeustas demo came about, because that was a load of different things that I tried out. I was like, oh, I wonder if that will work, and I wonder if that will work, and etc.
Love that demo.
Um,
Love it.
yeah.
Need more
Uh,
demos.
yeah, no, I've got some effects that I've done. It's putting them together, and I'm working on something else with Paul at the moment, but it's going to be
Excellent.
more music based. So you're going to have like options that you can select and stuff,
Hmm.
with a few demos around the sides and the tops and stuff. So yeah, that's in the works at the moment. But yeah, so I called that sort of LCD type game, if you like. I called it Brick Racer,
Okay.
and that was the first sort of thing I sort of released, if you like.
Was that on
Um,
the original Spectrum?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, so that was just for a normal Spectrum, and then I started sort of just playing with like like a platform sort of style game in AGD, and I thought, well, let's see if I can sort of come up with something. And I was trying to sort of think of like loads of ideas, and I thought, well, maybe you could sort of be like this sort of ball that rolls around, because one of the games that I liked for the Spectrum was Impossible,
Yeah.
um, where it's sort of a sort of pseudo 3D environment where you could sort of like go to the back, come to the front, you had to bounce in the cylinders, and then get to the end, without sort of getting popped and things like that. And of course, you're a bouncing ball. And I thought, well, it'd be cool to sort of do like a 2D version of that. Um, but I ended up sort of just doing an animation of a sort of like a rolling ball going along. So you'd move and then it'd sort of animate and roll at the same time. Um, and I thought, well, you could sort of like have cylinders that you can sort of bounce on or collect, that kind of thing. And then I did a video, and I sort of put it out to the community and just said, oh, this is just something I'm working on at the moment. And some people said, oh, I like the ball animation. Some people said, I like the bubble animation.
Right. Okay.
So
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, bubble. Hmm. Yeah, because I hadn't made it like a solid color.
Yeah.
It was just the outline and just like a sort of reflection sort of bit in the middle, that's just rotated around, and that's all it was. But because some people sort of said bubble, and it was probably about 50-50 on, there's quite a few comments. I can't remember how many comments there were, but it's probably half and half, where it's half said it ball, half said bubble. And I thought, bubble, actually, that sounds like a good idea, bubble. And then I thought, well, actually, you could have like bubble sticks that you get, like the sticks that you dip into bubble mix
Yeah.
to blow the bubbles and
Hmm.
stuff. I thought, oh, you could collect the sticks. And I thought, well, actually, sticks, it looks a bit sort of weird and stuff. Maybe have bubble mix instead. Like because the bubble mix that you sort of get, I could just call it bubble mix. So I thought, well, you could have that instead. And then I thought, well, how am I sort of going to get like a bouncing animation? Because in AGD, all you had was sort of move up, move down, like automatically you could have sort of something bouncing between sort of 2 points, but like smoothly. So not sort of like boing, boing, but just sort of going up, down, up, down. And I thought, well, that doesn't really work. So I thought, well, let's just mess around with mechanics, and just see what I can sort of come up with. And I thought, well, I wonder what happens if I'm automatically moving the sprite up, and then I issue a fall command, and I do that in every frame. Um, so when you issue the full command, it basically gives the player character gravity. So if you're on a platform and you go off the edge and you haven't put the full command on there, it will just float. It won't sort of fall. But if you issue the full command, it will have the gravity and it'll go down. So I thought, well, let's have it with sprite up and full. And it created a perfect bouncing animation.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, perfect. It's such a simple thing. It was just 2 commands, full, sprite up. And that's all it was. And that's the bouncing animation. And I thought, well, I'll get it. So when it hits the floor, so if can't go down, do the bouncing animation. And then, that's how that was sort of born, really. So that was released. So I started that in 2017, ended up releasing it in 2018. So I think it was about 11 months on and off as a design, coming up with the designs for the screens and stuff. Well, it took me a while because I've never designed the game before. But yeah, so I thoroughly sort of enjoyed doing that. And it got really sort of good reception and stuff. So I'm pleased that people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I want to do other games. Obviously, I've done Flappy Bird for the next as well, mainly because I wanted to sort of challenge myself. I wanted to sort of see if I could do it because it involved parallax scrolling. So yeah, the layer 1 background scrolling slower than the layer 2 background coming in, and then it was a case of drawing because the pipes are tiles, so it's a case of dynamically drawing those each time. But there's no tile map, so it's all random. So all the pipes are randomly generated. They're not predetermined before the actual game starts. They're all randomly generated on the fly. So every pipe you see, everyone that comes on has been chosen at that time. So and then I thought, well, with the bird going up and down, use similar to what AGD did, have like a sort of like a jump table to make it sort of like have, instead of sort of like this, an actual proper bouncing motion, if you like. So similar kind of thing. And yeah, it all just sort of went from there, really. So I've got loads of things that I've tinkered with. Obviously I've got the Zeustas demo, and that was a result of me sort of posting a few sort of like things that I'd sort of done in the basic next group. And Paul Hesso commented on one of them, and he said, "Oh, this would sort of be, you know, good with some music to it." And and I said, "Oh, are you offering?" And I'd never spoken to the guy beforehand. I'd never sort of met him. I'd seen like his music, his YouTube channel and stuff, and I'd sort of heard about him. I knew sort of he did like Commodore 64 stuff. But I sort of messaged him, and I was like, if you're interested, we can sort of do something. If you've got a track, I can try and sort of put some stuff to it. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So he gave me the Zeustas track that he'd done of the Zeustas breakout from the film Madagascar. Yeah, so it all just sort of went from there, really, and it was a case of just trying different effects. I've sort of go to bed. I've got a notebook by the side of the bed, and I'd go to bed, and I'm like, I've got an idea, right? Sketch it down, right? This is how it would work. They'd come in from there, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was really fun because it's so many different techniques. You've got sort of like circles that have been plotted, and then I'd save those coordinates to like in a bank, and then given the sprites those coordinates are offsets. So those like spinning circles you see at the end, that's what they are. So that's how they work, and the same with like the sine wave with the almost like a worm, if you like, that goes up and down the screen. I think it's just after that. So yeah, so it's I like tinkering, and it usually results in something. I mean, tinkering again, I did in AGD again because I got quite into that at the time. When I first sort of found, I just googled and I found it by accident actually. I did like a Zelda, Legend of Zelda sort of demo.
Okay.
You know, like the first one on the NES.
Yeah.
So I did sort of the main screen. I sort of like copied. So I sort of like took screenshots, played the game. I took screenshots. Then I used paint.net, zoomed right in so I could get it pixel by pixel. Copied the sort of sprites as best I could because it's obviously just 1-bit sprites. And then yeah, just like tried to sort of like get a sword animation because you had to generate another sprite in front of it for the sword, and then stop the player moving at the same time so they can't move into the sword or away from it. And so yeah, so that was quite a good experiment to sort of see how it sort of get a player moving in multiple directions, pressing 2 keys at the same time, that kind of thing. But people sort of like, when are you going to release it? I'm like, well, I probably can't because obviously, you know, Nintendo are pretty hot on the copyright,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yeah.
So probably not a good idea, unless I call it something else and give it different graphics.
Yeah. Well, you can
But
always do
yeah,
that. Yeah.
but tinkering is a big part of what I do, and I have this habit of trying something,
Mm.
and like, oh, that's good, and then I sort of think, oh, actually, I've got an idea for this. Well, let's do that. Oh, I've got an idea for this. Oh, what's that over there? I've got an idea. So I sometimes have trouble focusing on one particular project.
Mm.
So I mean, I've got a couple at the moment. I'm working on a game at the moment, which is a port from I won't say what it is at the moment, but graphics may be done by a well-known person for it, thanks to Paul Hesso.
Okay.
And I think sort of Paul possibly might provide some music to it as well.
Right.
But it's a port of a Spectrum game, an original Spectrum game that was done by, I think it was actually done by Ocean. Yeah.
Oh,
So then,
okay. You got me thinking now. You say.
yeah.
Yeah, you got me thinking now.
But yeah, with Imposter Bubble as well, I might port that to the next, because in Basic, so everything I'm doing is in Basic in the next because it's so vast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like as good as AGD, but you've got the raw code to do everything you need with, like sprite commands, etc. Automatic sprite movements. It's so easy to do. But I've actually made my own platformer engine using Basic. So I can get it sort of like to detect walls and when you jump on stuff. And it's all dynamic, so I can create any kind of scene I want, and it will automatically know where solid walls are, where platforms are that you can jump through and then land on, but can't go through them, but you can go up through them. That kind of thing. So I've got that, and that can be applied to so many different things.
Oh,
And
wow.
I've actually managed to replicate the same mechanics using the same sort of code, if you like, that I used in AGD to get a bouncing animation, and it works. It's weird. It works exactly the same. I've just translated it from AGD to Next Basic.
Yeah.
So Impossible might be coming to the next, an actual proper next version. So we'll see. But
Oh,
yeah,
that.
so that's a bit long-winded, but yeah, that's sort of like current stuff that I've sort of done, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be fantastic if we could get a next version of it. I mean, I didn't get to play it until I think it was last year, and I ended up doing. I think I did a little video.
Yeah.
because it threw me at first. The controls did. I think I remember commenting. Um, because
It's weird because you had to you can only sort of bounce, because I thought it'd be weird if you tried to sort of jump and you're sort of mid-air, because then you could effectively sort of go anywhere on the screen.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
thought try and get it when you hit the floor, because it's again the same as Impossible. You
mm,
could only bounce higher
that's right.
when you'd hit the floor first,
Yeah,
almost like that sort of trampoline effect.
yeah,
So yeah, so I tried to sort of emulate that. So
yeah,
it's a bit weird to get used to at first, but yeah. So, but
yeah.
I
It
hope you enjoyed it.
absolutely. It's a when your brain gets it, it's a fantastic mechanic because it would have spoilt it if I think if you'd have just been able to have moved, and it would have made it a little bit easier, and you haven't got to think about it. Whereas you've got to get that timing right and go right
Yeah,
now I can jump, and it's the way it should be. It just throws you at first.
yeah,
It's like, oh, what kind of move? Oh, I know. It's because I've got to follow real life, like real life physics, isn't it? I've got to follow the yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, that was fantastic.
No, thank you.
Um, you, I've noticed you've got a blog that you keep.
Yes, I have. Yeah, it
Um,
hasn't been updated for a couple of months, but yes, I've sort of decided to like start doing that off the sort of back of my Facebook page. Really,
yeah,
I thought, well, if people aren't on Facebook, um, then they sort of can see it that way as well, really. So yeah, I think I started it March. I
mm,
want to say March this year, I think.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I have. Yeah.
yeah. So that's retrobeachman.com, and
Hmm.
I'll put some links and stuff in the description anyway, so everybody
Cheers.
can get to that. But one thing I have spotted on your page, well, there's a few things actually that I want to ask you about. First
Mm.
one is, are you dabbling in VR, the VR world? Because I love VR.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you're working on within that space, if you like?
So I've I've done like a sort of a literal sandbox at the moment,
Mm,
just to sort of get me sort of used to sort of different mechanics and stuff, to make sure, because there's basically this framework called AFrame,
right.
which was released by Mozilla, who did Firefox a few years ago. And it's basically a way of integrating it into normal HTML code. So you might sort of say, oh, this bit is a paragraph, so that's the P tag, and then ending the paragraph would be /P tag. And it's more or less the same. It's basically just including these tags with parameters. Um, and as long as you've sort of got that framework loaded in the background, which is basically just a JavaScript file,
Mm,
and then it's really, I think for me, it's quite sort of simple to create stuff in it. So I mean, originally I did have an idea, even like a sort of like a gallery of like sort of games that you can just not sort of play, because you can't sort of integrate sort of things to play and such like that. You'd need to integrate emulators and all that kind of thing. And I think it's already been done with things like MUVR and things like that for the PC.
ah,
Um,
yes, yeah.
but just literally like a gallery and maybe some info about some stuff, like basic stuff, or just like screenshots of the game. You can literally sort of walk around, almost sort of museum-esque, if you like. But one of the things that I'd probably sort of want to do, because now I've sort of worked out proper collisions and navigation meshes, so that you can just be constrained to walk along this path only and go this way, so you can't walk through walls, kind of thing. It's like a maze. I've always wanted to do like a kind of 3D maze. It's actually something that I tried to do in the Spectrum as well. Just like I'd have a map drawn out in an array, like AS1 equal 00, or 1 to 1 1 1 0 0, etc. And then I'd sort of like have draw commands. So I basically clear the screen, and you'd move forward, and it would draw the next one and sort of work out where all the openings need to be, if that was closed, if you're getting closer to that one. So I managed to sort of do that in BASIC, but it's something that I've always sort of gone to. I even sort of tried it in AGD as well. So, sort of similar kind of thing. Just I don't know why, I just seem to have an affinity for trying out sort of making maze stuff.
Yeah, why not?
So a maze is probably sort of one of the things I want to sort of try. Then I want to try and sort of seeing if you can get like enemies moving around, shooting them, that kind of thing. But yeah, so it's still very much in the early stages of sort of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm going to keep up with. But again, it's tinkering.
Yeah.
Trying out loads of stuff, and I can get that texture to look like that, or that moves around that way, that bounces that way, that's automatic. It's going back to my roots again of the spectrum, and applying it to that. So it's great. I love it.
I love VR. I've been waiting for the level. It's still not at the level that is in my mind, but I was waiting for the current level of VR since Lawnmower Man. When I watched that film, I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
man, I need this." But what VR system have you got?
I've got the Quest 2.
Yeah, which is so good. I mean, they've just increased the price on that. So
yeah, I just put it up £100, but on both options, haven't they?
Yeah, which is a little bit naughty, really. I don't know why they've done that. Unless they've done it because they've got well, it's not going to be called the Quest. Is it the next one? It'll be probably called the Meta, which will be the Quest 3.
Yeah.
And what they'll probably do is they'll release that obviously at a price, and then they'll knock £100 off the Quest 2, which puts it back to the original price, which is a bit naughty.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I can see him. That's what I can see him doing.
Is it Project Cambria or something? They've called it that, are working on it, haven't they? Something like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting when it comes along to see how further along it is from the Quest 2. Because I mean, the Quest 2 is probably at like sort of maybe PS2 stage thereabouts, PS1, PS2. Well, not PS1, but probably sort of the equivalent like PS2 stage. So it'd be, in my opinion, so I think it'd be interesting to see just how much they can change that, how much they can improve, and what additional features, eye tracking, hand tracking, body tracking. So
yeah,
that'd be interesting.
I mean, it's pretty good at the moment. I mean, have you tried the hand tracking on Quest 2?
Yeah,
that's weird, isn't it? That is so strange.
Where they've changed it and improved it as well now.
Oh, have they?
They've because it used to be sort of like you'd see sort of the hand sort of doing this and stuff.
That's right.
But it can properly detect like finger movements. So even if you sort of just like sort of doing that, it can see your finger bending like properly, and it tries to estimate. If it can't see your other fingers, it tries to estimate where they are and what they're doing, and then it's pretty accurate, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they've improved it a lot.
I mean, I think Valve have set a standard, haven't they? They really have. I mean, Half-Life Alyx, absolutely amazing.
That's amazing, yeah.
But I've got to say, physics-wise, I don't know if you've played Boneworks. Have you played that?
Boneworks, no, it's on my list. I have actually got it. I just haven't actually played it yet. But yeah,
Boneworks for me is the VR game everybody should be playing. Yeah. It hasn't got I mean, don't get me wrong, the graphics in it are incredible, but because the physics are next level, even more so than Alyx. Apart from the liquid shader, when they added that in Alyx. Have you seen the liquid shader in Alyx? When you pick up a bottle and you can see the liquid in the bottle.
I can't remember. It's a while ago. No, I can't. I've actually got it, so it actually moves around and stuff.
It's mind blowing. Apparently, it took them a month to do it.
Though, is something else,
it is.
It?
But just that shader, you'll spend half an hour just picking up bottles doing this and going, "How are they doing that?"
Yeah,
because it looks so real.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'll have to do that. So.
Yeah, it is good. It is good. The other thing I wanted to ask you, which I've got on one of my screens now, and I'll cut all this into the interview. But your bead art, I absolutely love it. Yeah, fantastic. Because it is like looking at pixel art, but obviously you're making it. How did you get into that? How long have you been doing that?
So that was, I started that when we were in our last house. So probably a good, I'd say a good sort of 10 years maybe,
Yeah. Okay.
thereabouts. But no, I think I started it, I was looking into stuff, and I think I found it on like DeviantArt, you know, that sort of app, that site. Because I was just like looking at different like sort of retro like art, pixel art, that kind of thing, and sort of crafts and things that people have done like in real life, like gaming art and stuff. And I think I came across it. I'm like, oh, what's that? And it's like hammer beads. I'm like, what hammer beads? Okay, so I looked it up. I'm like, okay, so you need these boards, and this is how it works. You put them on the boards, and then you put the essentially greaseproof paper over the top. You iron it, it melts them. They stick together.
Right.
Once they've melted, because of course they fuse together because they've sort of melted.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was it. And I thought, oh, great. Well, I can create loads of stuff because coming from sort of like spectrum background, you can see the sort of definition on the characters like pixel by pixel. So I'd take screenshots in emulators, zoom in, and like have a grid over the top and just basically copy it one by one.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so still sort of doing it. My 7-year-old, he's got some hammer beads now because he wants to do it, and he's made his own designs, like some Minecraft designs. He's done to like Among Us and sort of things like like that. But yeah, I think the one I had the most fun doing though was the keratops from R-Type.
I saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually framed it now. I haven't put that on the site. But,
that's the end boss, isn't it, to the first level?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to do that, and I couldn't find a suitable image. I was trying to sort of like take the arcade one. And I thought, well, that's a bit too big, if you know what I mean. So I thought, well, I'll try and scale it down. I'm like, well, let's see maybe what the Game Boy version's like. Looked at the Game Boy and I thought, well, that's great, but then I'd need some definition to it. Okay. I don't just want those sort of monochrome colors. So I thought, I wonder if there was a Game Boy Color version of it, and there was.
Okay.
So I thought, well, okay, great. I can take that and use that as a base. And what I did was I basically had an app on my phone. I can't remember what it's called now. Pixelb, Pixel, something like that. And it was for those things. So you could design your own thing on there using the hammer beads. So basically I designed it all on the app on my phone. Like I basically copied it first of all, and then I thought, well, the colors don't look quite right because obviously it's Game Boy Color. The colors obviously sort of slightly limited. So I sort of looked at some of the colors, and then I sort of traded some of them out to match the arcade colors. So like the green, for example, that sort of goes through his sort of spine, if you like. That was originally like the same color as his body in the Game Boy Color version. I thought, well, I'll change that. So it's like little subtle changes I sort of did there, and like the sort of like the wires going around to like the bits at the back and like the eyeballs at the sort of front. So I changed the color of those. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that. I think that was over 3,000 beads, and I had to have 12 boards because you can interconnect them. Had 12 boards all sort of locked together. So here's me sort of taking up the dining room table. But yeah, so that was really fun. It was a challenge to iron, most definitely. But because you had to sort of do a bit and then move on to another bit, wait for that to cool and stuff, and then actually getting it off the boards was interesting. But it was a fun challenge, and I definitely wanted to sort of do some bigger ones. So definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thoroughly enjoy that because it is one bead, one pixel, so it's perfect for it really. So
do they slot into like a wooden board or something? Do
they? So they're plastic boards, and they're peg boards. Right. So each sort of bead is sort of round, and it's got like a hole in the middle, and you literally just put them on the top, and they just like sit on there. They're all sort of loose, so if you picked it up and shook it around, they'd all fly off.
Okay.
But yeah, you just literally sort of place them on there. The pegs keep them in place where they're sort of supposed to be, almost like a sort of grid, if you like. and then you just put the greaseproof paper on the top, run the iron over it for a few minutes, and then
Just
put
fuses
something
them.
heavy on it.
Yeah.
Okay?
And then it just fuses them together. Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, you just melts them enough so that not they're completely melted, but melts them enough so that when they cool back down, they're stuck together.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got to put something sort of heavy on them as well, so that, because otherwise it'll sort of warp and it'll sort of go up in a dome. So you have to sort of like put a book on it or something for about half hour, and then it's good to go. And I typically iron sort of both sides, because if you iron just one side, it's great, you get that detail, and unless you're sort of framing it, then it's better to sort of iron both sides, because otherwise you pick it up and it's just really floppy. You can literally sort of do that and wave it around like a fish almost. So you sort of iron both sides, give it that sort of rigidity. But yeah, it's definitely fun. It's quite weird because you're using the household iron. So I'm just going to do some ironing, iron the beads. So it is a bit weird.
Do the shirt while you're doing it.
Yeah. So, oh, you ironing the clothes? No, I'm ironing some beads. What?
So he comes in with a basket full of all the all the ironing to do. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant.
I love it.
So, have you got any gaming heroes or people you look up to in the old community world or today's like gaming community? You know, like musicians or programmers alike.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Because one thing I sort of found out, I always had difficulties trying to remember people's names.
Same as me.
Yeah. I don't. Well, do you know what? There's something that it was in the basic group, the ordinary basics at Spectrum group, not the next one, a few years ago. And it was prior to all this Kickstarter stuff happening, prior to the next, prior to anything like that. And someone said about Manic Miner, and about it being ported as like to an arcade system or something like that. And I did a bit of Googling, and I sort of found a picture of Jim with his like custom arcade cabinet that he'd done, because he'd ported Manic Miner using the Pac-Man hardware, didn't he?
Yeah, fantastic.
But I put it up not knowing his face, not knowing who it was, because he didn't have a name on the picture, and I put it in the group, and I said, oh, well, this guy's done this with Manic Miner. And I literally just said, this guy.
This guy, yeah.
Because I didn't know who he was by face. I can sort of remember names to a point, but if you'd sort of said to me, oh, you know, Jim Bagley, I'm like, what did he do? And if you sort of said, oh, Midnight Resistance, Cabal, and all the rest of it, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember now. So I think once I'd sort of remembered who people were, I think Jim Bagley is sort of one definitely.
Yeah. He's a great guy as well, isn't he? He really is.
Yeah. So easy to talk to. It's I think him and Simon Butler.
Yeah.
Are sort of two people most definitely, because again, Simon's just straight talking. You get, you know, what you see is what you get from him. There's no sort of facade.
And isn't that refreshing?
Yeah. I respect people like that. It's just that, you know, don't try and be sort of who you're not, you know, sort of thing. So, but yeah, I fully respect sort of Jim for everything he's done coding wise and stuff, and what he can do, his sort of abilities, and he's teaching people now and stuff, to going through his like tutorials and stuff.
And that's his time, isn't it? And you know, to do that is it's brilliant. It really is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Simon as well, with all this sort of like Pixelb, because he's got his Dinosaur Pie website and stuff, and all the sort of stuff he did sort of back in the day as well and stuff. So yeah, and just how, just like you say, how refreshing it is, like the type of person he is, just how easy it is to sort of talk to him. He is just what you see is what you get. There's no sort of like hiding behind anything. It's just raw, and it is refreshing.
It is. So. There's a lot of like fake personalities out there, isn't there? And you can tell when you're speaking to them that, you know, this isn't you know. But you get that everywhere, don't you? especially at work, to be fair.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Got that a lot.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the next launcher and that
Yes.
project. Um, Obviously, you know that I'm part of that team, and you've recently joined yourself, which
Yep.
is awesome. So do you want to tell us what your role is in the group?
Sure. So initially, sort of Richard sort of suggested to me, "Oh, have you sort of got any like stuff?" Because I put up a couple of like palette cycling demos that I've done for the next, which are basically just images that I'd sort of created by just drawing stuff on the screen.
Mm,
Um, let's say just like plotting a circle and then just drawing random lines from it, giving each one an ink color, and then just changing the palette's offset slightly to animate it essentially. And I've done sort of various pictures like that. So I sent them across to him, and he's like, "Oh, would you be interested in doing some screensavers for like next launch as well?" Yeah, okay, yeah, happy to do that. And ended up becoming part of the team. But I did some screensaver, well, a screensaver which is like everyone's sort of name and like a star field in the background. But I think that's probably not going to be used purely because of the size of it,
oh,
because
okay,
it's quite big, because it's 800 layer 2 screens,
right,
and they're loaded in one by one after the other,
okay,
to essentially animate it. Because what I did was I did a video in Nero video, and
mm,
then took the frames from that, outputted each individual frame,
right,
and then converted each of those pictures to Next format, and then put them into a program which then just animated them just one after the other, just basically loaded them in dynamically from the SD card to give
uh,
an animation.
oh, okay, almost like a flicker book,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Okay,
absolutely, yeah.
got you.
Um, but that's about 40 meg in size. So I think for that to sort of be packaged up with next launch is probably a bit too much. But what I'm sort of planning to do, and what I do have already, is to actually sort of package it up properly so I can give it to Richard, is basically like those palette cycling demos that I've already sort of put out there. So it'd basically be a case of when the screensaver comes on, it would draw the image first. So it'd literally be plot and draw commands on layer 2 directly. And then you'd have like the palette sort of cycling. So that would be the screensaver. So yeah, that's the sort of plan for that. But yeah, so yeah, that's my role, and I seem to have sort of assumed the role of hosting the next sort of news streamer as well.
Yes, yeah.
So that sort of come about because I've sort of got my own virtual private server for my website, my two sons' websites, my sort of VR sort of site. I've got my mail server on there as well, which I sort of decided to sort of try and work out, see if I could do, and I seem to have just about figured it out. And then sort of Richard's sort of next news streamer. So yeah, so I've sort of created like a login sort of system for him, so he can just go in and update the file as necessary. So there's a few changes to be made to that. So I like to have fields in there, to, like title, description, rather than just the whole sort of text file are ready to be edited, which is, it's possible you can sort of do it that way, but it's sort of be easier if there's just fields and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm sort of going to be sort of doing for him at some point.
Wow.
But yeah, so it's sort of screensavers and sort of back end stuff, really.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Right then, Dave. It's been fantastic talking to you, mate. Really has.
Likewise.
Where can people find you if they're after some new next demos or games or anything about any of your bead making? Where can they find you?
Best place is probably my website, because it's got links to all my socials on there.
Okay.
So yeah, just retrobeachman.com. Then under the text at the top, which says just retrobeachman.com, you've got all the icons which lead to my social pages. So I'm pretty much Retro Beachman everywhere. Retro Beachman on Twitter, on Facebook. I think it's Retro Beachman Game. So facebook.com/Retro Beachman Gaming.
Right.
Yeah, but everywhere else it's pretty much Retro Beachman. So that's my handle.
Fantastic. Dave, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thanks for doing this interview with me.
Absolute pleasure.
Are you going to RCM in September?
I am. Yeah, I'm going there September. My wife's 40th on the 23rd. So
that was close.
So I've managed to sort of say to her, well, we'll do something on the 23rd, and then on the 24th I'm going to RCM. Then when we come back on the 25th, we'll do something with all your parents and stuff like that, and her brother and sister and stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a full 3 days, but I've managed to squeeze RCM in there. So yeah, definitely coming.
Oh,
yeah,
brilliant. Well, I'll obviously speak to you online, and I'll see you in person in Leicester.
Yeah,
excellent.
See you there, mate.
Right, I'll see you soon, mate. Thanks very much.
See you, mate. Cheers. Bye bye.